Hello and welcome back to the Roker Rapport Podcast Extra. You join us after, guess what, another absolute humming. This time off Cardiff, done 4-0. We sit bottom of the league. Things are looking probably worse than they did last week. It just seems to be getting worse week on week on week. We've got a big game at the weekend, probably a big match that will decide our future and probably our opponents as well, who are not looking too clever either in Hull. So based on that and based on the game at the weekend, we've got Les from Amber Nectar, which is a Hull fan site. How are you doing, Les? Are you well?
As long as I don't think about football, yeah, I'm quite good.
Well, I know where you're coming from with that. It's not been a great season for either of us, has it?
No, we must be the two most depressed fan bases in the Championship, without a doubt.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I was writing about previous games, and the really weird thing is, it feels like Sunderland and Hull play relegation 6-pointers every other season.
Yeah, we might have another one next season as we see if we can slide into the bottom division too.
I hope not for our sake, but I mean, from afar, to be honest, you can see that Hull are struggling, and it kind of took me by surprise how far down you were up until a couple of months ago when I was looking. But it's difficult sometimes to look outside of your own football club when you're having the season that Sunderland are having. So I suppose it's probably a fair question for me to ask, but how are things at Hull at the moment?
They're really not good, and we knew this was coming too. Over the last couple of years since the Allen's name change debacle, and the fact that they've not been able to get their hands on the stadium, which is like a municipally owned asset, which is probably the reason that they bought the club in the first place. It feels like our owners have been out to sort of punish supporters any way that they can. Some of the petty ways are withdrawing concessions so that senior citizens and children pay the same prices as adults, which has had a massively deleterious impact on our fan base. It just seems that every couple of months they come up with a new novel idea to sort of try and torture the fan base, and it's pretty clear that they're now just going to say, well, tell you what, let's not invest in the team, let's not really bother what happens with it, let's just take the parachute payments and take that money ourselves. So I think we sort of knew this was coming. But we still thought, even a fairly poor team should be able to challenge in the Championship or at least be in a playoff spot, even without a load of investment. But what we've had has been just dreadful.
Yeah, I think I kind of feel your pain with that completely. I thought, it wouldn't be fantastic. And maybe I didn't think playoffs and wasn't of that level, but I would have expected Hull to be pushing for that. And I would have expected us to be at the very least safe and sort of mid-table. But it just goes to show you how if things don't work sort of above the team and the manager, how south it can really go. And I mean, we all know about issues with chairmans. Ours, in my opinion, is completely killing the club, and it feels like he's literally done pretty similar to what you've just said and just took himself away. In our case, he's put Martin Bain forth to take all of the flack, which probably is deserving because he hasn't had the greatest tenure as in his role at the moment either, to be honest. But I'll be honest with you, from an outside perspective, the Allens, a lot of the negativity that came from that, from an outside perspective, was the name change and the things that went with it. It went a little bit quieter, but is that just a case of them just not caring anymore? I mean, take us through a timeline of since you've been relegated under the Allens. What's the situation right now? You've touched on it a little bit, but...
Well, I'm going to guess that's what outside the name change was an attention-grabbing thing, but things haven't really improved since then. There's been very little in the way attempt to sort of build bridges. There was a couple of fan consultation meetings about a week prior to the Allens meeting the Queen, who was coming to Hull, and one of the things he was coming for was to open a medical centre that the Allens have put some money into, and there was a strong suspicion that they'd said, oh, tell you what, let's organise a meeting with the fans to try and quell any dissent so that there's no protesting in front of the Queen or something like that. I think that's the sort of cynical way the relationship has descended to now. But it just seems clear that they're not going to invest in the team. And some of the choices they made a bit bizarre. I mean, the appointment of Leonard Slutsky, the former Russia manager, I mean, on paper it sounds like a good appointment, but it didn't really work in the Championship. And we've since sacked him and brought in Nigel Adkins, who's brought with him some twee positivity and sound bites, but we're not playing any better. In fact, we're still losing games. It's just we're not scoring at all now. We've showed up the defence a little bit, but we're just not scoring. I mean, the game against Reading on Saturday, it was a game against two very poor teams, bereft of ambition. The game felt like sensory deprivation torture, where at the end of the game you didn't know who you were or what day it was, and it just really seems to just sum up the malaise at the moment. And the worst part of Sunderland and Hull City being so far down the bottom of the Championship is it's not even as if it's a really good competitive league. You've got one good team in Wolves and everyone else is just awful. I'm really staggered by the poor standard of the football in the Championship this season compared to just a couple of years ago when we were last in it.
It's absolutely rotten. I mean, I've tried my very hardest not to be that sort of Premier League fan, so to speak. But I mean, the level of football is really, really poor. A lot of the teams, I mean, the better teams in the league. I mean, Cardiff hammered us 4-0 on Saturday. And to be honest, I didn't watch them and think they were brilliant. I just watched us and thought how easy we made it for them. Everything was... It was percentage football, which obviously has always worked for Warnock, but there's no team I've sat and watched apart from, and I mean, we even got a draw against Wolves, which was weird. That was a complete anomaly. But there's no team I've watched this season and thought, wow, they're good, they're well put together. It's just a lot of it's kick and rush football, and it's the fact that we're struggling so bad is just, it's horrible to watch. It's awful.
Yeah, and it feels like a damning indictment of the running of the two clubs by the respective owners and the people who put in charge, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really, really does. I mean, I've got a question here for you where it basically kind of outlines, I think, how you probably feel. And I can hear it in your voice already. I mean, but I've got the question here. It says, you're sitting just above the relegation places, and not for the first time in the last decade, we have that 6 point, as I was touching on before. Are you getting as tired of it as we are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the last couple of years, a lot of supporters have chosen to boycott going to games under the Allams. I don't think it had anything to do with relegation, although that never helps the attendance. But I think a lot of people have felt, while the owners have removed concessions, I think they feel morally, how can they go to games knowing that their cheap tickets have been subsidised by senior citizens and children paying full price? But even given the poor attendances, they're getting worse week on week. We must have had 12,000 in the ground against Reading, and people can just. It feels like the club's just been slowly wound down. It feels like a business that's about to be put into administration by businessmen that just don't care and don't have any feeling for the football. It's pretty clear that our owners aren't football fans. They couldn't explain the offside law if their lives depended on it, and it just feels that all they're in it for is the parachute payments at this point, and it just gives the fans just nothing to cling on to, no sense of hope. We had a macabre discussion about what grounds we haven't been to in League One when we inevitably get relegated, and there was a vague excitement about going to Fleetwood, for example, but that's about the height of our ambition at the moment, because it just feels like everything has been deliberately slowly wound down.
And it's funny you mentioned that. There's obviously we have a feature on Roker Rapport ourselves on the site, which is called Cans and Megabus, which is by my best mate and which is Tom. And it's hilarious. I find it really funny, and I don't mind saying that because it's not my piece. It's Tom's, and basically he has for a few years. He'll do the away games on a megabus and drink cans on the megabus, and that's kind of his shtick. And it's hilarious. But the more games it's gone on, the more he's wrote about it. It's got less about the match and more about just what he experienced in the city that day, because the match is so irrelevant and boring and pointless. And I hear that in your voice. You feel you're going through the same as we are. It does feel like a club that it's not even stuck in the mud. It's 6 feet under almost, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if we were on a megabus right now, I think we'd be driving it into the River Humber and out towards the steam. And the really sad thing is, I love that style of article because it talks about the fact that even though the football's dreadful, the camaraderie between the fans can be absolutely fantastic. But I feel as if Hull City fans are even being denied that because one of the crazy schemes they did was to say, right, we're going to move where the away fans are. And so a couple of thousand Hull City fans were told they were moving seats, whether they liked it or not. And then after relegation, the owners decided to close the upper tier. So anybody had a season pass in the upper tier were told they needed to find seats elsewhere. And one fan was telling me recently that this is his fourth season in a different seat, because every year the club write to him and say, you can't sit where you want to sit anymore, you need to choose somewhere else. And this whole business of removing the concessions, where people are bringing the children and families, and they're being forced to move to different areas of the ground because the pricing's been done on zones rather than, you know, the age of the person going. It's just destroyed all of that camaraderie of, you know, you go to a game and you know who the people on the row behind you are, and you know the people on the row in front of you, because the fans have just been spread like a diaspora, and people have been moved stand every season. So even that normal camaraderie and gallows humour of the people around you that you know, that you can cling on to, that's been willfully destroyed too. So people are like sat amongst people they've never met before, watching absolutely dreary football in a morgue-like atmosphere, and everything just feels hopeless and lost. It's really depressing.
You could quite easily be discussing Sunderland here. I mean, we are, I suppose, in the sense we haven't had the concession things really took me aback. That's almost spiteful. That's insane. Yeah, that's mental.
Well, I mean, you're punishing your fans who've been loyal for many years and are now on a fixed income, and you're dissuading your fans of the future. And, you know, it's not long in my supporting lifetime where you'd walk through Hull City Centre and all you would see is Liverpool and Leeds United shirts. And we've finally got to the point where we'd risen up the leagues. You know, it's 10 years this season since our first promotion to the Premier League after rising from the old fourth division. And we've finally got to the point where kids in the city are proud of the team, and they will walk around wearing the colours. And the club are themselves willfully destroying that, and it doesn't make any sense. Even if you just resign yourself to football being a business, what awful business sense that is! What awful branding sense! Just everything about it stinks. And it's hard to look forward to any weekend and any game you're going to. You sort of do it out of a habituation, a drudging sense of loyalty rather than any sense of this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, I don't really like admitting this because, as you said before, you kind of feel like it's your duty. But I moved to Glasgow about 6 years ago, and I've had a season ticket since '97. And this season, I paid. Well, we pay in like direct debit installments. It's something that you can do at the club, and it's something I've done pretty much since I've been able to. Since I've had to pay for my own one, and my dad hasn't covered it because I was too little to get a job. And I'd paid basically 3 installments, and this season I couldn't pay the last one, and it wasn't being sick of being relegated. It wasn't being sick of going down and the quality of football. A lot of it was towards the chairman, and a lot of it was like, look, I'm not bothered with this anymore. And a few of the lads, I mean, Tom who does Cancer Megabus, he's an away day man. He goes to all the away games. He'll go to the occasional home game. And a few of the other lads I'm with as well are home and away, or at least away games. But for me, I said, look, lads, I need a 2-month break from this because it's just waning on me too much. And we beat Nottingham Forest with 1 shot to their 25, and I thought, you know what, I think Chris Coleman deserves to have me back. I'm really stoked up by him. And I went back against, it was Barnsley on New Year's Day, and like I don't mean to make it sound, I can't put into words, but Jesus Christ, it was dead. I mean, as soon as we conceded, everyone just kind of was like, oh, well, this is not going to get any better. This is shite. And it is. And every game just feels like a chore, and you're turning up to matches, and it all stems from above at Sunderland, and it sounds exactly like the same at Hull, but I'm absolutely flabbergasted by, as you put it, the business sense of the Allens basically punishing people because you stood by your morals.
Yeah. I mean, most businesses would be really proud that their customers value the existing brand so much that they fight to keep it when there's a rebrand. Yeah, you know, I always think of like when Kellogg's changed Cocoa Pops to Choco Crispy babies, and there was like outraged children saying, "Oh, we miss our Cocoa Pops," and Kellogg's was so like taken aback by people loving their old brand identity that they changed it back, and the exact opposite's happened with Hull City. And I hate talking about football in a monetary business sense, because to me, football is a community enterprise. It's like a shared civic thing that you do. It's not about money. But even if you take it down to that level, you wouldn't get angry that people have said, well, how dare people, voice the disdain of giving ourselves a cheap American name because we think it might, trick some Chinese people into giving Hull City money, which is never going to happen anyway. We don't have any long history of being in the Premier League, and yeah, it has all just become miserable. I mean, I don't really care what division Hull City are in, really. I'll support them whatever. My formative years were watching them in the 4th division when it was called that, and then the Amber Nectar fanzine started 20 years ago next month when we were in the as it was called then, the 3rd division. We had 19 solid years of being in the bottom division, so we've got no real sense of, we belong in the Premier League. We Hull City fans genuinely don't think that, but we would like to enjoy supporting the club again. And sometimes I look back to those like trips to Rochdale and Cheltenham and some of what felt at the time really gloomy stuff in the bottom division, but at least we had some sense of belonging towards the club, and we felt like a quasi ownership of the club, and it was ours. Now it's made pretty clear to us that it's not ours, and that the owner will do what they want with it. And when you're sort of told you're not wanted, how long can you withstand that kind of sort of assault on your love for a football club? And I could, somebody was telling me today about how they went for years and they just couldn't face it anymore, and they didn't feel like there was a part of it, and they felt like the club hated the fans so much that what was the point of spending lots of money on going to watch them? You don't pay to go somewhere where you're clearly not wanted, and it's quite heartbreaking to listen to, really, because I don't know what else to do with myself if I'm not watching Hull City on a weekend. It's like asking me to cut an arm or a leg off. But I can see for many people it's got to the point. Maybe that says something about me, and maybe it says something about there's not much to do in the city of Hull. But I find myself going to Italy to watch Sampdoria a couple of times a season, and that's probably the only time I enjoy football live, is when I'm escaping the country and going watching Serie A football, because I can't get that sense of belonging in my own city, which is an incredible thing to admit.
It is, and I mean, we haven't lost our identity, I don't think, but I think we've certainly, and we haven't lost that the club is ours, but I do feel like we have lost almost like what Sunderland is about. And a lot of people, over time have spoken about Sunderland needs this and they need that, and then they need to find their identity back. And I feel like we've tried so many different identities under this chairman that we've eventually just kind of like died. And it really does feel like we're a dead football club at the moment, and it's really difficult to put into words for me, because there's not a word for it. We've gradually been declining for the past sort of 6 seasons and just turned into this utter shit. And I mean, like, the slogans that we have are absolutely mental. Like, they keep doing this thing where they keep, like, we announced a 3rd strip this season, which was like a grey colour, and it was apparently about our mining heritage. And it was, "Our future is rooted in our history," was the tagline. And yeah, I can buy into that if Niall Quinn's the chairman who understands what's going on. But you've got this Texan billionaire that's saying, "Oh, I can't sell the club. I'm not putting it into the right hands, and I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing that. So I don't want to sell the club unless it's to the right person." And this guy doesn't even go to matches anymore. It's quite obvious he doesn't give a shit. And I mean, he's mismanaged it for so long, and we can all make mistakes. But you have to remedy them, or at least hand it on to someone who can. And I refuse to believe that these people interested in the club can be any worse than him. I mean, yeah. I know when they come out with stupid slogans, I mean, bringing out a strip that's grey that is about our mining heritage, you just think, but you don't give a fuck, mate. You don't know what you're doing. And I mean, you've got a social media team that support different football clubs. Everyone behind the scenes, the people who have the ability to change things, much like yours, have no idea what Sunderland are as a city, let alone a football club. And it sounds like Hull have that. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a slogan for when they thought it was a brilliant idea to get rid of season passes and come up with rolling membership.
What?
And yeah, our owners think the sort of left field thinking geniuses that are going to change football. That was what the whole Tigers business was. Part of that was that. But when they launched these memberships, the slogan was "Earn your stripes," and that really irks people that have been going all of their life. And you think, we've not earned our stripes by now, watching the club when it was at its lowest ebbs, and we was throwing money in a bucket because the club was facing winding up orders, and we were getting beat by Scarborough and stuff. Don't tell us that we're earning our stripes. And perhaps I wouldn't mind if we had an away kit and they said, oh, it's black because it's the colour of the owner's soul or something. I could maybe.
Oh, that made me laugh.
That's impressed me about Sunderland. You was talking then about sort of fans feeling a loss of identity. I was always really impressed by the fans museum that was put together by Michael Ganley, and that inspired me with Hull being the City of Culture in 2017, because it was pretty clear that the Allams didn't want to do anything that was associated with Hull Council, because they wouldn't sell them the stadium. It was obvious the club weren't going to be involved in the City of Culture year, and that personally offended me, because I think, how can you have a celebration of Hull and not mention the football club? It doesn't matter that they've not been particularly successful. They've been a part of this city for 113 years. So I myself, inspired by what Michael Ganley had done with the supporters, with the fans museum, I approached one of the local museums here and said, could I put on a 3-month exhibition showing the history of Hull City's playing kits and put some of my collection of match-worn kits on? So I'd sort of like to say public thanks to Michael Ganley, because he was the seeing what he was doing on social media with the Sunderland Fans Museum was a little bit of the inspiration by me trying to represent Hull City in the City of Culture year.
The City of Culture is a thing I took very hard. Apparently, Coventry is a better place than Sunderland. I disagree on that, but there you go.
Well,
nonetheless.
The only thing I can suggest is perhaps Coventry needs more of a reputational boost than Sunderland is. Maybe try and look at it as a positive in that sense.
I spoke about this on a podcast a few weeks ago. If you've never been to Jackie White's Market, you've never really lived. And I know that's something I'm just saying but it's got the worst smelling smell of salmon that comes from it. But Jackie White's Market is an institution, and the Bridges, there's better shopping centres, I'm sure, but none quite like the Bridges, So I was disappointed that Coventry, who, as far as I last checked, don't even own their own stadium or have a half decent football team, not like we do, but nonetheless, won over us. I was very sorely disappointed. Also narrowly missed was Paisley. With me living in Glasgow, that's quite close as well. So it was a bit of a sore point for me.
Speaking of Coventry, a couple of years ago, a fans delegation met Assam Allen, and it was this 3-hour meeting that was absolutely bewildering. But during one part of it, he was talking about how other clubs use their stadium to generate income, and he was absolutely amazed because Derby had a KFC in one of the stands. But then he said, oh, Coventry City, they've got a Jaguar showroom in their stadium, and it makes the club money. And I just said, well, that they've been playing in Northampton for the last 4 years, and you thought, how much is that indicative of the just absolute don't careness of the owners, that they're stating Coventry City as a fine example of using the stadium when Coventry City are playing at Sixfields in Northampton? I think that told me everything I needed to know about Assam Allen right there.
Do you get kind of sporadic moments where they try to show that they care? Though we get a video or an open letter every 6 months when things are really shit.
We get half-assed videos, usually a couple of weeks before the transfer window, where the owner's son talks about what the club's objectives are in the transfer window. They've stopped talking to the local press because they can't stand anybody questioning anything they do and not just accepting everything they say. So they only really do official ones on the club's website now, and they're just dreadful, and the drivel. And it's always funny to watch them 6 months later and see what he said has come to pass, and usually it's none of it.
Well, we had when we got relegated under the Satan himself, David Moyes. We got a letter that said, we're going to outline from Ellis Show, of course. They're going to outline the plans for how we move forward or something like that. I can't remember the exact quote. I wish I had it in front of me, but it was something where we were going to find out what the plan was moving forward. It's now January. I'm not really sure what the plan is. I don't, unless it's going backwards to go forwards, because if that's the plan, it's work and do a treat. But we get these things, and again, it's through official channels. I feel like if he did, Niall Quinn, when Niall Quinn was the chairman, he used to do like a load of meetings. It was to garner season tickets. Don't get me wrong. It was to persuade people to buy season tickets. Niall Quinn never was too secretive about that. But he would go out and have meetings with fans, real fans, ones at the stadium, ones in like South Shields, ones in Whitburn. As far as I remember, a few different places. And he'd talk, and you know what? You would listen to Niall Quinn because he put himself on the line in front of real fans, didn't know what he was going to be asked. And second of all, you know that Niall Quinn understands the football club. So when a Texan billionaire who's ran the club into the ground, or, your owner, does exactly the same sort of thing and does a video online for 10 to 15 minutes, I think we're just about doing the right thing and questioning exactly the point of that is, why they're doing that. Are they just doing it to appease people? You don't have any belief in that. The proof is not in every 6 months releasing a 10 to 15 minute video saying how they care and what their plans are. The proof becomes in the action of what they do. And the actions always outweigh any words that might come out relatively all right. It makes me sick that we've been speaking for the best part of 20 minutes and we've never mentioned our football teams actually yet. It's all about the shit that goes on above.
Yeah. You're going to have to trail out the number of the Samaritans after this, because can't imagine the listeners are going to be enjoying this. But I have found it a little bit cathartic, oddly.
Yeah, well, it is, and that's the beauty of the podcast writing about Sunderland is sometimes you can just kind of vent what you want to get out. I mean, the amount of times this week that I've had to resist sort of writing like a rallying call to get some sort of protest. I mean, I don't know how to. I'm not going to say that because I don't know how to organise one. But it's with a football club, when you have an owner and this billionaire that has all this power over you, you sometimes don't know how do you have that resistance apart from not showing up. And I've been reading this week about what protests have worked, what kind of leaving, not going to the stadium and voting with your feet. How many times has that worked? And it doesn't. These billionaires just sit in the seat and they go, well, fine, whatever. And what you're saying to me just before, 12,000 fans, and it doesn't look like they're going anywhere. So it doesn't seem to bother them at all.
No, they don't go to games, so they're not. People have become apathetic about protesting at home games because the owners aren't there to witness it. So that almost seems pointless. But I just think back to the days when the KC Stadium, as it was then, now it's the KCOM, same company. They've just done a slight rebrand. There was always a sense of potential about Hull City where people said, I know we're divvying around in the bottom division, scuffing around playing Darlington and Hartlepool, but there was always a belief that we could do a little bit better. And when the stadium got built by the local council, there was a real groundswell of belief. And I remember a Tuesday night in the third division, as it was, the bottom division, where we played Swansea. We beat them 1-0 to go top of the division, and there was 25,000 people in the stadium, and we were struggling to sell out in the Premier League last season, and we're getting 12,000 souls at home games now. And if you can fill your ground in the fourth division, it's got nothing to do with people not supporting the club because of the division they're in. It's just because they just see the soullessness and the bleakness of the situation, and they can't bear it. And it takes a lot to boycott watching your football club. As a football supporter, it goes against your every instinct to not go watch your team. It's an incredible thing to be driven to. You get your people who are fair weather and they'll go when they feel like it. But when you've been going all of your life and you don't really know anything else, not going to a football game is a tremendously difficult thing to do. But of course, the longer you do it, the easier it will get, and that's what makes me worry for the future of the football club. And when you're pricing children out so that that generation of kids can't, so they're walking around wearing Harry Kane Tottenham shirts or Messi Barcelona shirts, and you just think, what a lost opportunity. We've 10 years ago we had this rise up the divisions and we got to the Premier League for the first time and everything felt bright, and it just feels that all of that hope and all of that opportunity has been squandered, and at the moment, just because of an Egyptian businessman who doesn't care about anything other than what he can extract from the club, and it's truly depressing.
Yeah, and I echo everything you say, and you just have to change the nationality of our chairman and the name of the chairman, and you've pretty much got a really, really similar story, give or take one or two anomalies, I guess. But it's you're right in what you're saying. It's so hard. I mean, I don't live too far away from the stadium. Like, it's 3 hours on a train. It's not that bad in the grand scheme of things, and even I feel that kind of sense of guilt that I'm not coming back depressed, drinking like half a bottle of Buckfast, and getting high on life, but depressed on the football coming back. But it just gets to a point where you just go like, the fuck am I doing here? Like, what's the point? And you don't want to be like that. And, you know, I don't think I'll ever be able to really give up on Sunderland. Unfortunately, it was injected into me, you know, from a very, very young age. I bleed red and white, unfortunately, or at least I think I do. And it's hard to just give up, but it gets to a point where, like, I've never in my life since I went to my first match in 1993 had to say, lads, I need a break. I can't take this anymore. Like, and it's funny you mentioned it's not the football. You're right. I've seen, when I started following Sunderland, we were kind of the same sort of level, 93 under Terry Butcher, fighting relegation in what was then the Ensley League Division 1. We had the Kevin Phillips era. I've had it all, and I've always felt like I wanted to go, like the 15-point season and things like that. I think what's really putting me off is going into that stadium feels like I'm going to like the funeral of like a relative. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's how it feels. It's just how it feels. Yeah, like every week. Like I mean, I can't even like laugh nervously at it like I normally do at funerals, to be honest. But I just feel so disconnected from the arseholes on the pitch and the arseholes in the boardroom. I think the only thing that keeps me in any way, shape, size, or form positive at the moment is the absolute beauty of Chris Coleman and the words that he comes out with, because that bloke is the right man at such the wrong time. Such the wrong time, and I really hope he sticks it out, because the things he's coming out with, if I've got a belief in anyone at that club, it's him. Which kind of brings me on to your manager. Actually, I guess we better discuss the round thing, the actual football.
I'll go on.
If we have to. What was the crack with Leonard? Was it Slutsky? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah, Leonard Slutsky. Incredibly nice man. He came to the club did a kit launch at the exhibition that I was running, because it was still running at the time, and so I had a chance to meet Leonard Slutsky. What a lovely chap! He's like the world's happiest Russian. You know, you normally see Russians and they're quite dour and miserable, but this was just like a incredibly cheerful chap. And over the course of like 6 months, Hull City broke him, and you could often be seen patrolling the touchline, you know, looking like he was in need of Gaviscon. He looked like he was going to vomit a basketball any moment. You see him, and you just saw him go from this happy-go-lucky chap to this broken individual that you know thought was like going through four bottles of Smirnoff an evening, and now we've set about breaking Nigel Adkins. And I probably shouldn't say this, but part of me doesn't mind that, because I always found Nigel Adkins really irritating when he was the manager of Scunthorpe United, and even a little bit irritating when he was manager of Southampton. And he's got that sort of like really twee positivity where you think he's going to start talking about crystals and karma any second. So I almost think seeing him broken by the Allams might be fun, because what he's come in and done hasn't really made a great difference. We won one game, that was the new manager bounce over, and it's been pretty dire since. You know, at least under Leonard Slutsky, we lost a lot of games, but we also scored a lot of goals, even if we conceded a lot, and the games were quasi-entertaining. You know, recently, the games have just been turgid, where, yeah, granted, we're tighter at the back and we're not conceding, but we don't look likely to score. We've gone 5 out of the last 6 games without scoring a goal, and it's just really awful to watch. And I don't know if he now doesn't know really how to change it. I don't think he's going to get backed in the transfer window, but he doesn't even seem to be trying anything. Let's just try a change of formation to see if it changes it. So it's interesting with Adkins. I wasn't overwhelmed by his appointment when he came in, but slowly we're seeing that grinning positivity being whittled away in the same that we saw with the previous manager.
It was a weird appointment. Like, Atkins is, I actually kind of feel the same way. I look at him and he does annoy me as well. But Simon Grayson did that as well. But Simon Grayson he had it similar to Slutsky. He went from being like this, I can't believe I'm here, massive club, yep, I'm going to fix it and all that. And slowly you were just like, you haven't got a clue. You're actually so broken. And then he goes on TV on Saturday and is talking about all the problems of Sunderland and this, that, and the other. And it's like, mate, you made them 10 times worse because you were shite. Like, and Grayson, I could never dislike the bloke. I kind of feel sorry for him because he was just terrible. But I think talking about Nigel Atkins, maybe I'm being ignorant here, but what did he really achieve? What, Southampton? Was that it?
Yeah, I mean, what he did at Southampton was pretty impressive. He took them, 2 divisions, established them in the Premier League, and he generated a lot of sympathy when he was unceremoniously replaced at Southampton. Not done a great deal since, admittedly. Really had a poor time at Sheffield United. I know their fans are thoroughly underwhelmed by him, but I sort of think it doesn't really matter who we appoint at this point. I think you could. Do like a Jurassic Park fusing together of the genes of Bobby Robson, Brian Clough, and I don't know, Carlos Alberto. And I'm really not sure it would make any difference given the state of the club and the fact that the owners just aren't prepared to give the manager the tools to do the job. It's pretty clear. We're not scoring goals at the minute, and we've already announced that we're not going to try and sign a goal scorer because we've got a couple of injured strikers who are coming back from long-term injury. And you know what an amazing gamble that is. They've had long-term injuries. In the case of Michael Keane, who we've never really seen anything. We've not had a chance to actually see if he's any good. He's had like 3 really serious knee injuries, and you sort of think at that point, is he going to be so psychologically damaged you never get anything for him? And Abel Hernandez, who has a proven goal scoring record for us at championship level, he's coming back from quite a serious injury, and I just think putting all our hopes in those baskets is asking for trouble and ignoring the fact that we're quite in trouble as it is. I mean, if we lose at your place on Saturday, I just think I'd accept that we're relegated already. I think the championship might as well kick us out the league.
I think if you get beat our first year, you probably deserve it, if I'm honest, without bad.
Yeah, it feels inevitable. It feels inevitable that we're going to come to your place and lose.
Well, I hope so, but I just even then, I couldn't even begin to tell you how we dismantle Hull, which, all due respect, seems a little bit depressing. I feel like I should be able to say that about any club in the championship and have an idea of how we can beat them, but no, we stink, for want of a better word. We're stinking the whole place out, just like we did the league last year. One thing I did want to ask about, since we're on the subject of football, you've got a few ex-players at Hull, and I was going to touch on Steve Bruce, but I think I'll leave that because I don't like the bloke at all. But I'm not a big fan of David Myler either. Someone who pretends he is this huge Sunderland fan, has been in with the away fans, and then celebrates like a wild man when he scores against us. But nonetheless, Seb Larsson, a guy who did split opinion here at Sunderland, but anyone who can pat the Sunderland badge in front of the Gallagher end after we've just done them in the last minute, he's fine by me. But how's he doing down at Hull?
He had a shaky start to the season. I don't know if that was fitness issues, but he's actually been fairly consistent and okay for us recently. Our midfield absolutely stinks, but it's hard to point the finger at Seb Larsson. He's sort of like been a bit metronomic and consistent in the midfield. So, of all of the players we're tearing our hair at, Seb Larsson is reasonably free of criticism. People are choosing to throw all the brickbats at Marcus Henriksen, our Norwegian midfielder. Something about Myler is fairly popular. I mean, people understand his limitations. I'm not pretending Hull City fans will tell you the thing that he's a great footballer, but Hull City fans just over the last couple of seasons have just seen a fire sale every transfer window, and any player that anybody had any affection for or hero worship for was just sold if they had any kind of monetary value, and it just sort of leaves David Myler as sort of like the last man standing, and so there's sort of a bit of affection for him over there. I'm slightly bewildered by his burgeoning career. He's managing to eke out a future career playing FIFA and becoming known for playing FIFA. It's highly bizarre. But yeah, there's no ill will towards Myler. That there's like Jade Goody situations where people sort of get on the back of a player, and then there's like a bit of a sea change where people realise the criticism's been over the top, and they say, "Oh, actually, I don't mind him really." That's what's happened to David Myler. There was a point when we had lots of quite decent players, and Myler was looking like the poorest of them. But now that he's the only player of that group left, sort of people look at him with affection and a remembrance of those days where we went so bad.
He's actually all right for us, David Myler, but I think what irked a lot of Sunderland fans, and you'll probably remember this, was his absolutely horrific dive to get Lee Cattermole sent off a couple of seasons ago under Poyet.
And it's not as if Cattermole needs any help getting sent off, really, is it?
Not really, no, not at all.
He'll
I mean,
do it
it's not.
himself.
You don't need to die for them. And I think with Myler, the problem we have with that is we can probably accept it from certain footballers. But with David Myler, the problem I have is that I've been at away games and he's been in the crowd with us. And I quite like that. Some people say it takes a ticket away from a real fan. I quite like that. I think it's nice. I think it's an affection from a former player. But when he does certain things, and then the fact that, I'm going to state this right now, when a player scores against a former club, I don't mind them celebrating, not in any way, shape, size, or form. So when he celebrated like he did in the FA Cup, I wouldn't have had an issue with that, not at all, as sickening as it was. But the way he kind of seemed to wildly go nuts about it, and then the dive in the same season, I think it's just rubbed Sunderland fans up the total wrong way, because you look at someone like Seb Larsson, who was very much a Marmite player. Some people loved him, some people hated him. But he'd always probably get a round of applause if he came back. I don't think Myler does when he comes back, and I think a lot of it's to do with the fact that pretends he was one of us and he has an affection for us, but then does us out of games with cheating, effectively.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but Steve Bruce, that's another conversation anyway.
Yeah, it is.
How did you find Bruce, if you don't mind me asking when you left? Because I personally can't stand the bloke, but
he is officially the most successful Hull City manager ever. So I feel like I do have to temper any criticism I had of him, and what he was exceptionally good at was managing the alums. He had a way of rubbing the ego, tickling the belly of Assam Alum and extracting money out of him. And during that period, we was quite competitive. You know, he wasted some of that money, but by and large, he just had the ability to wrap the urn around his finger in a way that no other manager's ever done. You know, prior to Bruce coming, Nigel Pearson left acrimoniously. Nick Barmby was made sort of temporary manager and then was absolutely shafted by the alums, and they've really screwed over every manager since Bruce. So, you know, Bruce has sort of put himself in a position where Hull City fans were, you know, we're fully aware of how Sunderland fans felt about him, but it's hard for us to really to have any ill will against him, even if he was running out of ideas at the end. He mucked up in 14-15 where he somehow manages to get us relegated after we'd spent a lot of money and we had a pretty decent squad, but he put it right the next season and got us promoted at the first attempt. And then he had the nous to sort of get out because he could see what was happening at the club, that the old man owner was sort of passing the torch on to his son because of ill health. The son's a complete idiot and was going to be even worse. So Bruce pointedly got out at the right time. So it's a funny one. I think all City fans completely acknowledge the reputation Steve Bruce has in Sunderland, but you know, given our history of scuffing around in the lower leagues under Steve Bruce, he had us, you know, our highest ever Premier League position, took us to a cup final, couple of games in Europe. It's very hard for us to dislike him, really.
And it's funny enough you say about he's your most successful manager. If Steve Bruce would have it, he would tell you he was Sunderland's most successful manager because he once actually got us to 10th in the league. And I don't know whether he's mentioned it while he's been away from Sunderland, but yeah, he got us to 10th in the league, and he likes to remind everyone of that, about how he actually managed that. And that kind of irks people a little bit, because when he was here, there's a lot of things he said since he's left, like the fact he was hounded out because he was Geordie. Very much not true. He's hounded out because he didn't win a game in the best part of a year, back end of the 6 months from December onwards, and then the season forward. And he basically pissed the Jordan Henderson money right up the wall and spent it on players like Craig Gardner and Kieran Westwood and actually Seb Larsson, who turned out all right in the end, but brought them all in on big wages, free transfers, 6 million here, there, wasted all that money. So yeah, he doesn't go down too well. But moving on to the game on Saturday, just to end, there's a question that I've started asking every single podcast now. So I'll ask a double-edged question. First and foremost, is there anyone in the Sunderland side that you would take in the whole team? And second of all, what is your prediction for Saturday's game?
I'll take the second question first. My heart's saying we're going to get beat. I'm also saying I can imagine this being another 0-0 draw. As for who from Sunderland I would take,
yeah, there's not many.
You've asked me a couple of months ago, I might have said Lewis Graban, but he's cleared off back to Bournemouth, hasn't he? And
everyone said Graban, funnily enough. If I'm talking, said Graban.
Well, I mean, maybe that's quite damning, the fact that I don't want any of them that are left. But then again,
Don't blame
I'm
you.
pretty sure that would be the same if I asked you that question. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be taking any of Hull City's players.
Well, I'd have Seb back, but I think that'd be an unpopular opinion between the fan base. But I'd have Seb back. That's about it, I think.
Fair enough.
We do need a centre forward. We've got no centre forwards. James Vaughan's gone now. Graben's gone back. We've got Josh Madger, who's 18-year-old, and Joel Asoro, who's 19, 20. So if you have any sort of spare centre forwards kicking about, which it doesn't sound like you do, maybe take one of them.
No, all of our strikers are injured. You'd have to put them on a Segway if you're going to get them on a pitch, I think.
We might have to with our wage budget and our transfer budget, but I suppose that really sums up both of our seasons, doesn't it? I'm clamoring to think who I would take from the Hull's team. You're unable to think of who you'd take from our team. I think that's probably the most depressing but best way to end the podcast.
Absolutely. It feels like this has been like a mutual counselling session.
Yeah, I feel a little bit cleansed after this, at least until in the morning anyway. So I hope we've done similar for you as well. For predictions for the podcast, I think I might agree with you. I think 0-0. We can't score. We haven't been too solid defensively, but I've been looking at your results. You last taken out the FA Cup. You haven't won any, but you haven't really lost too many. You've drew a lot 0-0. So I have a feeling a 0-0 again, but whether that does us any good, I don't know. But
yeah, it's not going to do either of us any good whatsoever, is it?
No,
I mean, if we can't take the game to Reading at home, I mean, Reading was an incredibly limited and unambitious side, and if we can't take the game to them at home, I don't see how we then travel to the Stadium of Light and take it to Sunderland away. It just seems highly improbable.
You don't need to do anything with Sunderland. You just wait for us to fuck it up. Like that's the aim of the game, effectively. Wait for us to make the mistakes.
If that's the case, there's going to be two teams waiting for the other team to fuck it up. It's going to be like, both teams will bring their own half with the ball still on the centre circle with nobody touching it. We're like that for 90 minutes.
I just feel like a single tear is rolling down my eye with either laughter or depression. I don't know. I'm a kind of mix of the both. But thanks very much for coming on, Les. It has actually been quite an entertaining and insightful podcast, considering we're both going through, if I do say so myself there, but anyway, going through very similar situations, I think, and any football fan across the board, and I'll include Newcastle in this, have similar feelings and emotions for their football club. So we all know what it feels like when things are just dead in the water and unambitious and unexciting. But I said this I did an interview earlier today with a former player when we were talking about the chairman. The one thing that is a real positive, and I'd like to end it on this, is that there won't always be an Ellis Short and there won't always be the Allams, but there'll always be a Sunderland and there'll always be a Hull, no matter what they do. So one of these days, no matter what we go through, we will come back, both of us, I'm sure. You can never truly break a football fan spirit, and you can never truly break a football club. So there's maybe some light at the end of the tunnel if you fixate on that.
Yeah, it is the hope that kills you, though, isn't it?
That's a famous Sunderland saying, and they actually write a little paragraph or so for us every other week. It is the hope that I can't stand, indeed, but I don't know whether I ever had it, to be honest. But thanks for coming on, Les. I always say this every week. I won't wish you luck on Saturday because I'm not going to be lying to you and talking shit. I hope we absolutely hammer you, but I don't see it. Good luck for the rest of the season after that, and thanks for coming on.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Les. Thanks, mate. So, yeah, I actually found that really quite cathartic, as I was just saying with Les there. It was perfect. Yeah, and hopefully, and I say this every bloody week, we're talking about a win come the end of it. I have my fears it won't. I have my fears we might finally realise that no matter what happens in January, no matter what things Chris Coleman says, this is just going to be that season where we're going to have to just suck it up. I hope that League One is a blessing in disguise, but hey, it's January. There's many games that this can be turned around. Thanks for popping in again, listen to me ramble about how shite we are. We've had someone who can reflect that back to us for once. I hope you join us the week after, but we'll be speaking to someone else from another club who probably is not going to be as depressed as me and Les. So hey, if you want to hear some positivity, join us next week. It's Graham signing off. Cheers.